Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. I have finished the decisive battle in the Valley of Gods, the system is activated. Chapter 61. At this time, Nami was still on the sailboat docked at the edge of the island. Nami's delicate body was leaning on the side of the boat, and her eyes were still looking into the distance. Don't worry, didn't Alan say he will be back soon? HMPH, who would miss him? Nami snorted and looked away from Alabasta. The arrogant little girl would not admit it even if she thought about it. You still say you don't want to, how can you deceive me? Nokigao raised his eyebrows at her and pointed to her chest, meaning that she was a devil fruit user who had eaten the soul fruit. Nami's little thoughts could not escape her detection, even if she did not use the fruit ability. The devil fruit is also subtly enhancing her perception. But Nami frowned. Okay, I know you've gotten a lot better recently, okay. ? Nokigao glanced at Nami blankly and laughed angrily. I'm telling you about fruit abilities, what are you talking about? I'm also talking about fruit abilities. Nami turned her head and continued to look in Alabasta's direction. Suddenly a hint of surprise appeared on her face. Nijigao, look over there, is Alan back? Nuo Chigao also looked over with some surprise, but immediately frowned. No, Nami, be careful, that's not Alan. I can sense many people on that ship, but not Alan. Nami was startled, and hurriedly ran to the cabin and took out a telescope to take a closer look, and her face suddenly darkened. Nuo Chigao, I'm afraid the person on the other side is not a good person. I can feel the madness and filth in their hearts. Nokigao nodded and casually took out the long sword that Alan left for her before leaving. Nami also assembled her own weapon. Although both women have had the experience of changing their muscles, cutting their marrow, and strengthening their bodies, and their strength has greatly improved on the surface, their biggest problem is that they still have too little actual combat experience. According to the original logic of Nami's survival at sea, she should take Nokigao and escape now, so that even if she is discovered by pirates, she can be deceived. But now the ship seemed to be there in Alan's home. The two women looked at each other and neither said anything about leaving. Get ready to take action. I hope Alan can come back soon. Nami tightened her grip on the weapon in her hand, still a little nervous. Don't worry, maybe we will have dealt with these people before Alan comes back. Nuochi smiled confidently. Don't forget, I am also a devil fruit user. The pirate ship in the distance was getting closer and closer, and the two women could even hear the noisy voices of the guys on the deck. Boss, there are indeed only two women on this ship, and they are pretty good looking. Standing on the bow of the approaching ship was a man wearing a classic pirate costume. He glanced sideways at Nami and the two girls, and there was a glimmer of light in his remaining eyes. Young men, go and catch these two women. I will eat meat for you tonight, and you will have soup. Oh, as the two ships got closer and closer, the expressions of the pirates on the deck of the opposite ship became more and more excited. Click. The plank stretched out from the opposite side was directly placed on the side of the sailboat where the two women were, and the minions who had been waiting for a long time immediately rushed over with their teeth and claws. Phew, plop. Just when Nami tightened his grip on his weapon and was about to go forward, the first minion suddenly showed a trace of struggle in his eyes, and then he instantly swung his knife back. The sharp blade directly cut through the necks of the 3 or 4 pirates who were following him, and several of them fell into the sea one after another. The gurgling blood continued to dissolve in the sea, dyeing the nearby beaches red. Ram, are you crazy? What are you doing? The man who was still rushing forward suddenly stiffened, unconsciously slowed down, pointed at him and yelled with an angry look on his face. The man who took action looked at his original companions with firm eyes and held the knife across his chest. I didn't expect you to be such shameless people. I, Ram, am ashamed to associate with you. Whoever dares to come forward today will leave his life here. Is this guy crazy? The few people blocked by him looked at each other with absurd expressions on their faces. The most beautiful girl on the last ship was snatched away by you. Why are you so crazy here now? Even if you fall in love with these two women, there is no need to kill our companions. Ram, these two women are wanted by the boss, are you crazy? When the name boss was mentioned, Ram's eyes showed a trace of struggle again, and after a few seconds, he became extremely determined. Since you are so stubborn, just stay here. As he said this, Ram already took his long sword and charged towards them in reverse. The people on the opposite side were not good at all. Seeing Ram like this, they just frowned and swung their weapons to attack him. Clang 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 clang. After a series of sounds of swords clashing, although Ram was brave and fearless, his success in the beginning was mainly due to surprise. Now being beaten with real swords and guns, he was quickly hacked to death by these original companions and thrown into the sea. Brothers, come on. The first mate on the opposite ship was holding a long sword and shouted loudly. As soon as several people in front of him stepped onto the plank, he killed them with 2 swords behind him. Wow! The remaining 20 or 30 people immediately made a fuss and took a few steps back. This is too evil. Why did everyone who got on the board rebel? Nami glanced at Nokigao secretly and found that the latter's face was a little pale, so she quickly stood in front of her. It seems that the previous situation was due to Nuoki's high spiritual fruit ability. She thought it was the conscience of the person opposite who found out. Logically speaking, it would not be a big problem for Noki to control 2 people due to his high physical fitness. But this fruit, Nuochigao, has only been eaten for 2 or 3 days, and it has not had time to be fully developed, so it consumes far more energy than normal use. A rapid sonic boom sounded, and the first mate only had time to hold his knife across his chest to block it, before his whole body was knocked out and hit the side of the ship. Before he could react, a flash of knife light had already flashed. The weapon in his hand instantly fell to the ground. The first mate shouted, "Ho ho ho," several times, blood dripped from his mouth, and then he fell down. Laozi is the billionaire elder of the Baroque working group. These people are all Laozi's subordinates. Did you just do something wrong? The visitor had a murderous look in his eyes, staring at Nami and Nokigao. If you want to fight, fight. Why talk so much? This ship is not something you can touch. Boom. As soon as Nami finished speaking, the billionaire elder appeared in front of her and slashed down with his long sword. She was also calm in the face of danger, holding her own weapon with both hands to block the blow, and then swept the opponent with her long stick to repel the opponent. Although Nuochigao has good physical fitness, he basically has no fighting skills and can only hide behind. Fortunately, her mind control is completely different from Mingji's puppet-like control. It changes the other person's mind from the heart and does not affect the other person's combat effectiveness at all. Kill. The dozen or so people behind the billionaires were divided into 2 groups. One group surrounded Nami, while the other group attacked Nokigao. Under her full control, the 2 cadres on the opposite side blocked the rest of the minions with their swords. The 2 weapons danced like a tiger, and at least they were safe for a short time. As for Nami, although she was at a disadvantage, this kind of true no-sparing battle continuously stimulated the remaining medicinal power of the bridling essence in her body, and even showed a trend of becoming more and more courageous as she fought. How is this possible? The billionaire elder opposite Nami had the deepest experience. At the beginning, the woman in front of him would retreat from time to time under his attack. But now, the 2 people's weapons are evenly matched. Nami, who went to sea at the age of 7 or 8, has a lot of combat experience that is not comparable to that of Nuochi. She has vaguely suppressed the opponent. Whoosh! The billionaire elder turned his head sideways dangerously, and a long stick pierced him straight through. This move scared him into a cold sweat. If it weren't for the intuition developed through constant battles between life and death, this stick would probably have opened a hole in his head. The direct stab failed, and Nami's long stick swept across the air. Amidst the sound of the sky breaking, one of the minions behind her flew off the deck and fell into the water with a scream. Nami calmly retracted his long stick and assumed a defensive posture. Do you want to continue? She has the upper hand now, but after all, the opponent has a large number of people. If she really puts her all out, she will definitely be unable to defeat the 4-handed opponent with 2 fists. Are you kidding me? Do you want it to be over after killing a few of Laozi's men? Today you, the woman, Laozi is going to decide. The billionaire elder stared with a grin on his face, and the long knife in his hand continued to strike towards Nami with the sound of breaking wind. This woman just brought a wooden stick. What are you afraid of? Give it to Laozi. As the billions of elders roared, the minions surrounding them glanced at each other and rushed forward with ferocious expressions. If Nami was holding a long knife at this time, it might still have some deterrence, but if the stick is not used well, it is really not as strong as a sharp blade. Click. This was the sound of the wrist bone of a sneak attack being smashed directly by Nami. But before he could scream, others pushed him aside and swung several long knives at Nami at the same time. Billions of elders also attacked. It was obvious that he was using one of his subordinates as bait to force Nami to reveal her flaws. The confused Nami was suddenly in danger. While avoiding the attacks of several people, he also received 2 more wounds on his body. After fighting for a while, Nami kicked the opponent in the chest, then twisted around and knocked him away with a stick, then took a step back and took a breath. The woman who controls people is not a threat. Leave 2 people to entangle the 2 controlled losers, and the rest will come over to deal with this first. The billionaires glanced at Nuo Chigao, and they probably knew something. At that moment, the reason why he didn't go up to attack Nami together was because he felt a palpitation in his heart, as if someone had been speaking deep in his heart. It's just that his will is still firm, and there are no traces left in his heart by the other party, but I guess it's the ability of the woman hiding in the cabin. As long as you can't control him, a billionaire, it doesn't matter which other minions you control. Brothers, let's go together. Before he could finish speaking, he only felt a burst of pressure coming from top to bottom, as if the world was about to collapse. Everyone involuntarily knelt on the ground with their knees bent. Nami stared blankly at the group of people in front of her with wide eyes. You just said you were ready to fight, why did you suddenly kneel down? Turning back to look at the smile on Nokigao's face who had walked out of the cabin, Nami instantly realized something. Looking in the direction of Alabasta, sure enough, a huge turtle was heading towards them. Although Alan's conqueror's domineering power is not yet exaggerated to the extent that it can intimidate generals from a distance, there is still no problem at all in suppressing these miscellaneous fishes from a distance of more than 10 kilometers. Slowly, the turtle came to the side of the ship, with Alan walking in the middle. Robin and Vivi took 2 steps back, followed behind him, and walked from the kneeling crowd to Nami. This moment made her a little confused. Trance. Alan, you are finally back. Feeling Alan's breath at close range, Nami breathed a sigh of relief, and tears immediately came to her eyes. Nami, you are injured. Come on, follow me into the cabin and bandage her up. Seeing the blood stains on her body, Alan was also shocked, and led her towards the cabin, and Noki, a senior in high school, also hurriedly followed. As for the kneeling people outside, no one was worried about them from the moment Alan came back. Hiss. Seeing Nami frowning and taking a breath, Alan quickly held her face to face in his arms and comforted her softly. Does it hurt? Pain. Women are like this. When there are no men, they can even scratch the tattoos on their arms with a knife. But when you have a man, you become fragile. Even if you squeeze the wound, you will grin with pain and burst into tears. Nami's eyes kept filling with tears, which made Alan feel distressed. He raised his head and glanced at Robin who was applying medicine. Be careful, don't use too much force. Yes, Robin sighed secretly in his heart and once again reduced the strength in his hands. Vivi's eyes widened on the side, showing a look of disbelief. At this moment, the person sitting on the bedside holding the orange-haired woman distressed Edley, and still patiently coaxing her softly, is it really the devil she saw? How about it? Even though Alan is usually a bit fierce, he is actually a very gentle person. Nuo Chigao stood nearby. Although she didn't know who this little girl with sky blue hair and pretty face was, since she was brought back by Alan, she must be a companion. Yes, yes. Vivi forced a smile on Nuo Chigao, then nodded with a dry smile. Gentle people, that is for you. When she left Alabasta Palace, there were still 2 piles of ice crystals on the ground. After a few minutes of cooling, the wound on Nami's back was treated with medicine. In fact, just for these wounds, if Ellen hadn't kept asking Robin to be gentler, she would have healed them in less than a minute. Okay, there are others watching. Alan gently patted Nami on the shoulder, and the latter looked up and realized that in addition to the Robin whom Nokigao had met, there was an extra beautiful girl on the boat. Ah, why didn't you tell me earlier? Nami almost jumped out of Alan's arms. Although such an injury looked serious, to her, it really was nothing. She was just acting coquettishly in her lover's arms, and she didn't expect that she was being watched by other people. Vivi was about to say something, but when she saw Alan behind Nami, her innate momentum weakened. Hello, I am Vivi, the Princess of Alabasta. Because Sir Alan defeated Crocodile and saved our country, I beg him to let me follow you as a maid. Princess. Nami and Nokigao took a breath of cold air at the same time and stepped back. They have been to Alabasta before. Although it looks relatively desolate, the area is also very large. Princesses from such a big country still have some pressure on girls from small villages like them. Vivi was about to say something when she suddenly noticed that Alan's expression was a little ugly, so she hurriedly moved forward and grabbed Nami's hand. Sister Nami, Master Alan really helped us Alabasta a lot. I also volunteered to come to the ship as a maid, so don't mention the identity of the princess again in the future. Noki raised her eyebrows. Although she didn't know why, her senses clearly indicated that the princess of Alabasta in front of her had a series of complex emotions such as fear, flattery, and panic. It seems that there are other things between the princess and Alan, otherwise she would not be so scared. But so what? Alan is his own man. No matter what he does, it is as it should be. While dealing with Vivi, Nami looked at Alan. While Vivi was looking for Nokigao, she moved next to Alan, looked at Vivi, and secretly lowered her voice. How many belly did Alabasta give you? Alan was stunned and scratched his head in embarrassment. No, I forgot to ask them for money. No. Nami stared, her voice rising several notches. We haven't gotten back the money from the casino, and we haven't gotten back the money from Alabasta. We've lost money. Speaking of this, Alan was also a little embarrassed. Originally, he said that there was a lot of money in the casino, but the old guy Garp came. In order not to affect the two women, he let them go first. At that time, I didn't expect that the old guy was still so naive despite his age. I don't blame the old thief Oda for killing him in a plot. Don't worry, we will figure out the money for Garp when we go to the Marine headquarters to settle the accounts with him. Bailey, you can have as much as you want in the future. Alan rubbed Nami's head and gave her a pie that was not a big pie, and the latter happily accepted it. By this time, although she still liked Bailey as much as before, Bailey was no longer the most important thing in her life. Okay, let's go deal with those people outside. After giving Nami the medicine and introducing Vivi, the next step is to deal with Crocodile's people outside. Although Your Excellency is very strong, we are members of Baroque Works. There are hundreds of billionaire elders like me in the studio, and there are even strong men above the sea. What happened today, just forget it, how about it? The moment the momentum appeared that made them all kneel down, it was clear that this billionaire was no match for him. Now the only bargaining chip that can be used to negotiate with the other party is his own work company. Unfortunately, judging from Alan's expression, this bargaining chip does not seem to be as heavy as he imagined. Nami, Nokigao, I leave the handling of these people to you. Alan didn't even bother to talk to these kneeling people. I don't know what Crocodile was thinking. The dignified Shichibukai only knew how to engage in conspiracy, but he actually gathered such a large group of rabble. He has no fighting power, he just makes trouble and causes trouble outside. Otherwise, kill them all. Just as Nami was mid-sentence, Nokigao interrupted. She had just heard the dirty words coming from these guys' mouths. If the two women really fall into their hands, they don't know what kind of torture they will suffer. Sometimes kindness is necessary, but the target of use must also be divided. If they are released and go to other villages and towns, they may become another dragon pirates. For such people, Nuochi Gao has much more murderous intentions than Nami. Vivi was a little unbearable on the sidelines. Although these people were all members of the Baroque Working Society, the headquarters of the Baroque Working Society was in Alabasta, and there might also be people from Alabasta among them. But on this ship, she was not even qualified to make suggestions, so she could only suppress her pity and turned her head away. Robin. As Alan's voice fell, Robin nodded knowingly, and then stood up. 30-round flower throat lock. 24 people who were still kneeling in front of them suddenly had two arms growing on their backs at the same time, forming an L shape and strangling their necks. Click, click, click. The sounds of broken bones sounded like firecrackers one after another. This group of people also fell down and lost their lives. This, killing them all. Vivi looked at Nokigao, who had made up her mind with some fear, then at Robin, who was doing it himself, and at Alan, who was expressionless all the time. Whether they are kind or indifferent, the people on this ship really have no respect for life. This also unknowingly made Vivi believe what Alan said about his attitude towards Alabasta. If he is dissatisfied, he will really kill someone. What are you thinking about? Nokigao came up to Alan and hugged his arm curiously. Compared to Vivi's fear and Robin's awe, her and Nami's feelings for Alan are the purest. Nothing, I'm just thinking about recruiting some powerful thugs. What I want to do is indeed quite dangerous. Alan's expression was very serious. Nami and Nokigao were his women, and women should be pampered from behind. Alan had never considered letting them go out to fight. Looking at the dozen corpses on the deck, Vivi felt very uncomfortable. Even if these people may not all be their Alabasta's subjects, they are still a life after all. This is the fundamental reason why Alan doesn't like her. These people are the subordinates of Crocodile and his gang, careerists who want to overthrow their Alabasta regime. Does she still have the heart to pity them? If Alan hadn't appeared, Cobra would have been nailed to the city wall with big nails. Let's see if you are still the Holy Virgin. Vivi, let's get rid of these bodies first. Robin smiled lightly and stood behind Vivi, pushing her gently, which also woke her up from deep thought, and hurriedly threw the corpses under the boat. Although Robin herself had been drifting on the sea for so many years and was no longer an innocent little girl, she still couldn't help but want to help Vivi when she saw such a kind-hearted person. If the girl stood there in a daze for a while, the bad-tempered captain who could not protect himself would have any bad thoughts. Okay, just leave it to Vivi to clean up. Let's go in first. Alan's hands held Nami's shoulders and pushed her directly into the cabin. Nokigao originally wanted to lend a hand to help, but Alan pulled her in directly. Only Vivi and Robin were left on the deck. Ellen, we are still too weak. Nami sat on the bed looking a little disappointed. She originally thought that her body had been transformed, and Nokigao was still a devil fruit user and could provide a lot of help to Alan. As a result, it seems that the two of them took it for granted now. It turns out that they are still so weak. What are you thinking about? Alan rubbed Nami's orange hair vigorously, and then hugged Nokigao, who was standing next to him. One of you is my navigator, and the other is my personal assistant. You are not a combatant. How are you, strong or weak? He buried his face in Nami and Nokigao's hair and took a deep breath. Alan was also a little scared. If he comes back a little later, I'm afraid the consequences will be disastrous, and he won't know what he can do by then. Let's go to the next destination and see if we can recruit a combatant for the ship. Where to go? You'll know when you get there. After sorting themselves out, the sails of the ship unfolded with a roar, and the 5 people controlled the direction and set off towards the next island. New World. On the Moby, a group of pirates were cheering and having a party. The huge figure sitting in the middle is none other than Edward Newgate, who is recognized by Dahai as the strongest man in the world. At this time, he was holding a bottle in his left hand and drinking wine from a large bowl with a diameter of more than 1 meter in his right hand. Suddenly someone ran over with a piece of information in hand. Dad, Captain Ace is back with news. Whitebeard, who was still drinking, raised his eyes slightly drunkenly. How's it going? Did you catch the traitor Teach? No. The man took a careful look at the information, with a look of horror on his face. Ace. Captain Ace said that he met a strong man from the previous era named Aren in Alabasta. He had a bad attitude towards our Whitebeard pirates and injured Marines Lieutenant General Garp. I remind you that you must careful. Quote. Alan, he's still alive. Impossible. Whitebeard's eyes narrowed, and the aura on his body unconsciously spilled out. This name is so familiar. The battle back then was so profound that he would never forget it even if decades passed. Dad, I'm afraid this Alan really does exist. Marco hesitated for a moment, then stood up and took out a reward sheet from behind. The one printed on it is none other than Alan, with a reward of 5.5 billion Baileys. He hid after receiving this information before, because Whitebeard's father's health was getting worse and worse. If such a big pirate with a bounty on his head encountered them, it would have a great impact on his health. But I didn't expect that the other party, who looked so young, was actually a strong man from the previous generation. Ellen, ku la 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 la. Whitebeard glanced at Alan's photo on the reward list and suddenly laughed. Dad, if this guy has any ill intentions towards our Whitebeard pirates, do you want us to deal with him in advance? Diamond Josie, the captain of the 3rd Division, stood up with a hint of murderous intent on his face. Even though Alan's bounty is 5.5 billion, as members of the world's strongest pirate group, they have no reason to be afraid. Yes, Dad, let's go deal with him. Captain Ace happens to be outside, and Captain Marco is leading the team to prevent her from disturbing Dad. A group of pirates who were having a banquet were making a lot of noise. Whitebeard glanced around with satisfaction at the crew members who were still volunteering to take action, and a smile appeared on his lips. Isn't this the family-like partner he wants most? My stupid sons. Although I don't know how strong that guy Alan is now, he is not someone you can easily deal with. Just stay in the new world. If he really wants to come to us, then just fight. Lousy has a white beard. Oh, Dad is the strongest man in the world. A group of people cheered and cheered. Whitebeard is the spiritual pillar and pride of the entire pirate group. As long as Whitebeard is around, they will be the strongest in the world. No one noticed that there was a trace of worry in the eyes of the white-bearded man who was drinking. New World All Nations. Mom, Marine has sent out another outrageous reward list, and it's for a young man. The reward is actually 5.5 billion. Oh, bring me the reward list. Charlotte Linlin's eyes lit up. She is too old now, but if there is such a brilliant young pirate, she can also use marriage to get him onto her warship. After all, there are still many daughters in the Charlotte family who are not married. Ah, why is it him? No, impossible, what is Marine doing? Charlotte Linlin's eyes widened when she got the reward list, her hand unconsciously relaxed, and the reward list slowly fell. The children of the Charlotte family who were still below looked at each other, and it was the eldest brother, Charlotte Perosparrow, who took the lead to take a step forward, lowered his head and picked up the reward list. It's rare to find a reward list that can make his mother have such a big reaction. He wants to see who it is. Seeing that the eldest brother reacted more than his mother, the rest of the people also stepped forward to take the reward list. The younger brothers and sisters behind might not feel much, but Katakuri, Daifuku, and Owen's eyes widened at the same time. They were all people who had witnessed that battle in the Valley of the Gods. The youngest Owen was 7 years old at the time and could remember it. Marine is joking. Even though Charlotte Linlin is now known as the Four Emperors, the small figure and great power from back then still appear in her mind. Katakuri, you contact Morgans and ask him to find the person on this reward list. I need you to confirm it, do you understand? At this time, her already obese face had a hint of ferocity, and even a sense of uneasiness. I understand, Mom. Katakuri nodded. What his mother asked him to explore was nothing more than the authenticity of Alan's identity. It is indeed the most appropriate for him to go. After all, if Alan is really the same person back then, his domineering ability to predict the future can also help him increase his chances of escaping. Alan's reward list distributed from Marine headquarters really made the entire sea boil. Oren, and that Ace, the Whitebeard pirates, and that crocodile. Although due to the special nature of his identity, Sengoku still doesn't know Ace's specific bloodline. He only knows that he is Garp's grandson, but this guy has joined the Whitebeard pirates and cannot be ignored easily. Warring States had a headache and rubbed his head. Oren alone is enough to make him upset, and now the Whitebeard pirates have intervened here, and Alabasta is also complaining to the world government because of Shichibukai's usurpation of the country. All these things were pressing on him, the Marine Fleet Admiral. The wise General Sengoku back then almost felt like his afro was starting to lose hair. Fleet Admiral, the latest news from Alabasta, the subversive Alan entered the palace and forcibly snatched Alabasta's Princess Nefertiti Vivi. Now there is a protest to the world government, and we need to be dealt with by Marine. Sengoku slammed the table in front of him. Originally, all this guy did was destroy the country and kill people. Why did he start grabbing women after more than 30 years? Warring States. Garp's face was a little pale and his voice was a little weak. When Alan sneaked up on him, he didn't hold back much because he knew the old guy's physical strength. Even though the doctors at Marine headquarters have superb medical skills, they can only stabilize his injuries and slowly recover. Looking at Garp, who was wrapped in gauze like a mummy, Sengoku also sighed secretly. How many years has it been since this old partner of mine suffered such a serious injury? Why don't you continue to rest? Seeing Garp look weaker than ever before, Zhongguo felt a little distressed and helped him sit on the sofa aside. This little injury is nothing, ahem. Garp originally wanted to laugh heartily, but ended up coughing as soon as he took a deep breath. Okay, what's the point of pretending to be here with me? What do you want to say? Sengoku rolled his eyes at him angrily, then took out a donut from the drawer and ate it in front of Garp. After hesitating for a moment, Garp shook his head, his eyes slightly complicated. That guy Alan, his strength has completely recovered, and it is almost the same as before. Moreover, he has also changed and become a little cunning. He knows how to use my grandson to sneak attack on me. If you have a plan, you must be careful, you'd better inform me. Hey, why are we informing you? You're already injured like this, why should you go and send someone your results? Sengoku glanced sideways at Garp, saying something disgusting, but the concern in his eyes was very obvious. Don't worry, I just sent Porisolino out to follow and monitor him. There is no plan to encircle and suppress him yet. Garp nodded after hearing this. That's right, it's appropriate to let Porisolino go. His safety can absolutely be guaranteed. Thinking of the guy who was a general who was lazy and always had a strange temper, Garp and Sengoku had a rare agreement. Alan, are you right? We want to follow the current to the sky. The four girls of Nami looked at Alan sitting on the deck drinking tea in a dull manner. The latter took a sip of the tea handed over by Robin as if nothing happened. I have to say that it is strange that there is a tea culture in this world. Don't worry, how could I lie to you with such nonsense? On top of our sea, there is also a white sea, which is the legendary Sky Island. On it are not only the thugs I am ready to collect, but also the gold of the year. It's the location of the township, and it's basically filled with gold and historical texts. Gold everywhere, historical text. Nami and Robin's eyes lit up at the same time. The latter covered his mouth and chuckled, then took a few steps forward and leaned against Alan's chair, his slender thighs and Alan's arms pressed tightly against each other. Although I haven't seen any records about Sky Island in the book, but since the captain said that Sky Island exists, of course we have to follow you. Alan's previous actions let Robin know that he still has thoughts about her. In this case, why not take advantage of it? Nami, who still felt that she and Robin were on a united front when Alan was telling the story, saw Robin's actions, pouted, and pushed her aside and came closer to Alan. It's definitely no problem to go to Sky Island, but no matter what happens this time, the gold can't be left behind. Alan paused, rubbed Nami's little head and smiled. Don't worry, I'll get you more gold no matter what this time. Now we need to go to Gaia. There is a guy there who specializes in studying upwelling currents. We can use his experience. As for permanent pointers to Gaia, then rely on Alan's old skill, look for passing ships with knowledge, color and domineering, and then the permanent pointer will naturally +1. The sailboat slowly sailed into the dock of Gaia Island, and Nami looked around unexpectedly. This island is a bit strange. Why are all the pirate ships docked here? Not only that, the people on the dock basically have dirty minds and all kinds of disgusting thoughts. Nuo Chigao also frowned, showing a disgusted expression. Although the environment and scenery here look pretty good, it's just that the beauty on the outside is in ruins. Alan, Nami and Nogi got off the boat to find the person he was talking about, while Robin took Vivi to guard the boat. As soon as the three of them got off the boat, a drunkard wandered over with a red face. He, 2 little girls. Before he finished speaking, his eyes turned white and he fell down. Why are you drunk now? The companion next to him pushed him twice, but there was no reaction at all. It was not until Alan and the others had left the port that the man's eyes, ears, nose and mouth began to slowly ooze blood. He's dead. Go find the captain. It must have been done by those 3 people just now. What a bunch of scum. Alan led Nami and Nakigao as they walked towards the edge of Gaia Island. Although he forgot the name of the man, he had a chestnut head and lived in half of the house by the sea. He was still impressed by 2 points. Just because of this distance, Alan can no longer remember how many pirates he silently killed who wanted to covet the 2 women. It is really a gathering place for pirates and a paradise for scum. If it weren't for the fact that there were many normal people and innocent animals on Gaia Island, he would have just sunk this broken island and town. Hey, is that guy in front of you the one who killed my men at the dock? The three of them had just left the town and entered the woods when an angry shout came from behind. Dozens of pirates roared in the distance and chased after him with swords and guns. No matter where you come from, or you are a devil fruit user, if you dare to kill Lousy, Before he finished speaking, a group of people fell down like wheat. I have to say that this Conqueror's hockey is really a magic weapon to clear troops. With it, when clearing minions, the force will be fully maxed out. Captain, do we want to go up? These are 5.5 billion human heads. The time for hunting has really arrived. Just above the house at the edge of Magic Valley Town, 4 people were lying on the eaves and observing. The person on the edge was almost out of proportion and was wearing a strange hood. He was beating his fists and shouting, with a crazy look in his eyes. Captain, I'm already targeting him. Shut up, Burgess. And Oka, put your guns away, this guy is not something we can deal with yet. The person lying in the middle with the leader had curly hair, bare chest and breasts, missing a few teeth in his mouth, and had a very solemn expression. Blackbeard Marshal D. Teach. Although he is recognized as arrogant, he has obtained the secret fruit, which greatly expands his ambition. He even wants to touch Alan, who has a reward of 5.5 billion from Marine headquarters. But Alan's immediate response to Conquerors just now still made his eyes widen. The strength and precision of use of this Conquerors are not even inferior to Whitebeard's when he first joined the Whitebeard Pirates. The second step of his plan has not been implemented yet. Now when he meets such a strong opponent, he is really afraid that he will not be able to defeat them, and his ambition will wither here before it even begins. Blackbeard. Alan glanced back casually, and the hairs of Blackbeard and others stood on end. He found us, run. Blackbeard was the first to jump down from the eaves and ran towards the town. Several people in the pirate group also jumped down. Haha, Captain, you are in such a mess now. Burgess followed Blackbeard as he ran away, pointing at him and laughing. Ha 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 ha, who allowed us to meet the top strong man in the sea? Blackbeard didn't take it too seriously, he looked quite free and easy. What's going on over there? Nami looked behind Alan's line of sight, but saw no one there. It's okay, I seem to see an acquaintance. I must have made a mistake. Alan shrugged, and the three of them continued walking forward. Lousy doesn't care about the traitors of the Whitebeard family, he just wants to snatch their heads when he gets on top. Are you looking for upwelling currents? Do you want to go to the sky? You have to risk your life. Montblanc Kulakai, who had a chestnut head, glanced sideways at the 3 Allens standing outside the house. It is other people who are risking their lives. To me, a mere rising current is nothing. I just need you to find a good position for us. No, it can't be done. The Emperor Cloud has not formed yet. You will fall down even if you go up. Hey, you're a bit verbose. I just asked you to find the upwelling current for me. How can you talk so much? Although he knew that this guy meant well, Alan didn't have the patience to slowly explain to him what was going on the empty island. Now he just wanted to find the rising current and rush directly to the White Sea. The Sea of Clouds is also a sea. Once you reach the top, Nami will naturally come into play. Okay, I'll let the Sarutian United Army investigate. I will notify you if there is a rising sea current recently. Looking at Alan's eyes, Kulakai agreed without any hesitation. After all, he is a man who once destroyed a country. Even if Alan is not at full strength, it is not something Kulakai can bear. His intuition was reminding him crazily that if he continued to be nagging, he might really die today. 3 days later, the 5 Allens stood on the deck, watching 2 tall monkeys detecting seafloor currents in front, and then pulling their ship in that direction. Alan, is there really any rising current? Besides, the uncle said it's easy to die. Is there any other way to get up there? Nami glanced at Alan with some doubts. The latter was sitting on the beach chair with his eyes closed and concentrating. Hearing her question, he reached out and hugged her. Don't worry, there is no danger in the rising current. The other way up is at West Blue. Is it possible that we have to change course and go there? That's true. Although Nami felt a little uneasy, she still chose to believe in Alan and look ahead with him. Suddenly, the sky turned dark, the entire sea seemed to be boiling, and the waves became larger and larger. Brother, the foreshock of the explosion is coming soon. Everyone, please be careful. The orangutans on both sides reminded them loudly. Alan stood up with a calm expression and glanced at the frightened women. Everyone grab the fixed position around them and leave the rest to me. The women obediently hugged the mast, the side of the ship, etc., with a trace of nervousness on their faces. Different from battle, this kind of natural disaster that cannot be resisted by human power is the most dangerous thing on the Grand Route. With the cloudy sky and heavy rain, a huge whirlpool gradually formed on the sea ahead. Compared with its size, Alan's sailboat was like a mouse in front of an elephant. The disparity was huge. The two orangutans' boats pulled them to the edge of the whirlpool and then retreated at full speed, fearing that they would also be sucked into the whirlpool. No, are we just going to enter this vortex? The faces of Nami and Nuauchi-Gao turned pale. Who wouldn't know that being sucked into a whirlpool while sailing on the sea will basically result in the ship being destroyed and everyone being killed? Don't worry, we'll be fine. This whirlpool is really big. Alan leaned to the bow of the boat and looked at the big whirlpool with great interest. You must know that in his previous life, he only watched anime on the computer. How could this direct contact with reality be more shocking? The sailboat continued downwards along the route of the whirlpool until it entered a calm sea area. The whirlpool also disappeared, and large bubbles continued to float up from the bottom of the sea. What happened? Don't move. The upward current is about to start. Nami was about to move toward Alan, but he stopped her with his hand. Sure enough, as Alan's voice fell, violent fluctuations appeared at the bottom of the sea, and the entire ship swayed left and right under the power of God. Boom! The next second, a huge water column spewed out from the sea, pointing straight into the sky. The sailboat that was originally parked on the sea also rose up and followed this force straight towards the sky. At this time, even if Nami was reassured by Alan's words, she couldn't help but scream in the weightless state. Nokigao's soul fruit was connected to Alan, but was influenced by him. He felt extremely peaceful and even looked around at the scene in the sky. It was also their first time to be at such a high altitude, so they would inevitably be a little curious. Suddenly the sailboat began to rock, and under the action of gravity and centrifugal force, the entire ship began to tilt outward. Alan, open the sails. Nami from 2 years ago was keenly aware of what should be done, let alone Nami who has already integrated navigation knowledge. After the sails were opened, the sailboat flew up into the sky again with the help of the wind. Finally, the ship reached the top of the rising water current, only one step away from the clouds above. But just this step away seemed to be a chasm. Without the help of rising sea currents, the sailboat was no longer able to continue flying upward based on wind speed alone, and had even begun to fall downwards. Oops, the current is not strong enough. We are going to fall. Nami's face was ashen and she looked at Alan desperately. If you really want to die, you have to hold this man in your arms. Dying together might not be a hopeless romance. Don't move any of you. Unfortunately, before she could say anything, she saw Alan standing on the deck. He didn't know when he had a black robe on his body. The next second, he turned around and jumped off the ship. Alan. Nami stared, screamed and was about to run over, but before she could make a move, the hull of the sailboat shook and suddenly flew towards the sky at an extremely fast speed. In just a few seconds, everyone penetrated the lowermost cloud layer, all the way up, until they burst out of the water and were exposed to the sun again. Alan, where's Alan? As soon as the boat stopped, Nami and Nokigao immediately rushed to the place where Alan jumped, lying on the side of the boat and looking down. But at this time, there was only a white cloud under the boat, and the situation below could not be seen at all. Alan is dead. Nami slumped on the deck with dull eyes, staring blankly at Nokigao. When Alan jumped down just now, he must have used some method to bring them up, and then fell down himself. Thousands of meters high in the air, no matter how strong he is, he will still be shattered to pieces. Nuo-Chigao, why is he like this? However, Nokigao looked behind Nami happily and did not answer her. How am I doing? You did it without my consent. Nami didn't realize something was wrong until she was halfway through her words. When she looked back with big eyes, Alan was standing behind her and looking at her. At this time, looking at Nami who was in bloom and Nokigao who was relieved, and then looking at Robin with a habitual chuckle on his face and Vivi with a complex expression, Alan once again confirmed that his attitude was correct. Only Nami and Nokigao are truly their own people. Don't worry, there's no way anything could happen to me. Alan said this very confidently. Even if the ice rope connecting the sailboat to himself broke, it didn't matter. Kaido can jump off an empty island and pretend to commit suicide, so he is not afraid of a Xuanwu fruit. You scared me to death. With red eyes, Nami jumped directly into Alan's arms. At the moment when he jumped down, Nami really felt that all her thoughts were lost, and her dreams and sailing didn't matter anymore. She just wanted Alan to appear in front of her again. Fortunately, God fulfilled her prayer. Although Nokigao is also worried about Alan, she is better than Nami because her spiritual link is still connected to Alan and has not been interrupted, so she is not as desperate as Nami. Okay, I'm coming up now. Look around you. This sea of clouds is so spectacular. Several people stood on the side of the ship and looked into the distance. They saw a vast sea of white clouds, which even seemed a bit like another world. Is this above the clouds? Is the legendary Sky Island here? Nami looked at the sea of clouds around him with some excitement. Everything he saw was white, and he didn't see anything like an island. Robin curiously made an arm on the hull of the ship and fiddled with the water in the sea of clouds below. This is the White Sea. The clouds are not too dense and are almost like seawater. Let's go over there. When we go up there, we will reach an empty island. Alan jumped up, and after identifying the direction from a high place, he answered their questions and then pointed out the direction to Nami. The Sea of Clouds is also the sea. As long as it is the sea, navigators can find the direction forward. Let's go to Sky Island. Nami was the first to cheer enthusiastically. She hasn't forgotten yet. Alan said that there is a place full of gold on Sky Island. Nami is coveting it. Oh no, she has been yearning for it for a long time. Of course Alan knew what Nami was thinking and smiled softly. Although Alabasta missed it, that country does not have much money, but Sky Island is different. Let's not talk about the Golden Country, just the Ark Proverbs must be sailed away. Just in time to subdue Enel and let him act as a little brother behind his butt, otherwise it would be too hard to find a little brother like this Logia fruit. More than 30 years ago, Alan began to try various methods to deprive devil fruits, whether it was using sea floor stones to create a sealed space and placing fruits in them to kill the Esper, or using armed color hockey to capture devil fruit energy, or directly taking them away. If the user with the fruit ability and the fruit were to sink into the ocean together, there would be no way for the devil fruit to appear nearby. Thinking about it, if there was a method, the world government would have used it in the past 100 years. How could it imprison those dangerous devil fruit ability users into Impel Down City and not kill them? So, if you want the thunder fruit, the easiest way is to recruit Enel, your little brother. The sailboat was sailing in the Sea of Clouds, and everything around it was new to a few people. In addition to controlling the direction, the women were looking left and right at the surrounding environment. Suddenly, Nuo Chigao frowned a little. She was running back and forth happily just now, but now she was suddenly out of breath and even sweating a little. Her and Nami's bodies were strengthened by the kind of medicine Alan gave them. How could they run out of breath or even sweat after running 2 steps? Alan, something seems wrong here. My body has become weak. Not only is it powerless, but it is also difficult to control it. Nami and Vivi also nodded at the same time. They were still in a state of excitement before and didn't notice it. Now that Nokigao brought it up, they naturally felt this discomfort. It should be lack of air. After all, we are at a high altitude. There must not be enough air below. We just need to get used to it. After all, he is a scholar. Robin thought for a moment and then directly gave the standard answer. Alan looked thoughtfully at the waterfall reaching the sky in the distance. Under the waterfall, there was a gorgeous gate with a golden half-pentagon-shaped roof and silver wall stones. There is a big sign with the words, Heaven's Gate, written on it. While several people were still observing the building, an old lady walked out of it, took out her camera and took a few photos. Hey, what are you doing? Nothing done, nothing done. Alan stared at it, and the old lady was suddenly frightened, hurriedly waved her hands and took a few steps back. I'm an old man, why are you so fierce? Nami patted his arm on the side, and then looked at the old lady in front of him with a smile. Is this the Sky Islander? She has wings on her back. Noki, a senior in high school, also hurriedly came over. Even Robin, who was well informed, had never seen such a race. Looking at the stares of several people, the old lady seemed to be used to it and didn't care at all. Instead, she asked a question in a routine manner. This is the Gate of Heaven, and I am the supervisor of the Gate of Heaven. Are you here for sightseeing or to fight? Why is there such a problem? Of course we are sightseeing. Nami was stunned by her question and responded directly. In fact, Oren wanted to directly say that he was going to fight. After all, he was going to beat Enel soon, so it was more appropriate to say that he was going to fight. Tourism costs 1 billion IK per person. 1 billion. Nami and the other girls' eyes widened instantly. No matter what currency unit an IK is in, this amount sounds a bit scary. We have no money. When he heard that he wanted so much money, even if he couldn't pay it, Nami felt as if he had lost half his life, and his whole body would turn gray and broken. It's okay. You can go in even if you don't have money. I'm not a guard. I'm just asking you. The 4 girls were all stunned by the old lady, and Nami was instantly revived with full health. It doesn't matter if you have it or not, she just comes here to eat and drink. The next second, 2 large pliers suddenly stretched out from the water, fixed their sailboat, and then rushed upward along the cloud road at extremely fast speeds. Alan, something is wrong. The old man just now has great malice towards us. Nuo Chi-Gao endured the wind pressure brought by the speed and came to Alan's side to remind him. Don't worry, I understand. Of course Alan knew that the old woman was tricking people at the Gate of Heaven. After people didn't pay the tickets, the guards above would charge 10 times the fine. But they were originally here to deal with Enel and steal the gold, so why did they have to pay this money? In the end, it's not clear who will cheat whom. Just when a few people reached the bye-bye sea, a notification sounded in Alan's heart again. The series of tasks is being released. Road to the Strong Four. A mere thunder fruit user is worthy of being called a god. It's time to tell the big earlobe what a real god is. You don't need any physical knowledge, just use your fists to teach him how to be a human being. Mission details. Please defeat the thunder fruit user Enel head-on without using fruit abilities or any props. Warm reminder. The main task cannot be refused. Please host complete the task seriously. There will be corresponding rewards for each completed task. If the system could be realized, Alan would definitely look down upon it. What the hell? Do you need to use any fruit abilities or sea tower stones to defeat a guy like Enel who only has the power of seeing and hearing? Wouldn't it be better to just use the direct kill method and rush past with fists? However, compared to solving Enel's problem, what Alan is thinking about is whether there is a female character that Straw Hat and the others have encountered here. After all, there is a side mission to follow. Obtaining more mission rewards will also give Nami and Nokigao some means of survival. Ah, a new person is here. Enel, who was lying on the large chair, suddenly sat up. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys. There seems to be a pretty good ant among them. How should we play? Call the 4th god tier officer over, then a bunch of white berets are no match for me. Yes. The maid serving on the side responded with a grunt and walked outside. Wow, this is an empty island. Except for Robin, the other girls were all under 20 years old, and their attention was instantly attracted by the beautiful things in the distance. Beyond the sea of clouds, a large group of buildings appeared, with several huge vines standing faintly behind the buildings. Even the beach on the island was lined with green plants and full of vitality, and was in harmony with this white patch of land. The vastness formed a sharp contrast. Smiles appeared on the faces of the girls. Although Alan had said that he would come to Sky Island before, after all, no one had heard of it, and there was still a trace of doubt in his heart. But now it's completely gone. Even Vivi has forgotten the previous unpleasantness and mingled excitedly with Nami and Nuo Chi-Gao. Let's go change clothes and play on the beach. Nami pulled Nuo Chi-Gao and Vivi towards the cabin with excitement on her face. No revealing clothes. Alan's voice came from behind. Although he is a man who is devoted to many people, his woman can only be devoted to one person, and even her body can only be shown to him, even if it is just her back. Hey, I know. Nami pouted and looked unhappy as she led the other two women into the cabin, but as soon as she entered, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but turn up. Hey, Nami, Alan is jealous. Nokigao nudged her with his elbow, with a smirk on his face. Why don't you dress more revealingly and see if he's jealous? Seeing the two sisters fighting, Vivi's mood suddenly dropped. You can play as much as you like, she is Alan's woman, she is just a kidnapped maid. Alan, look at this. Not long after walking onto the beach, Nami excitedly waved to Alan from the other side. Look, this uncle said it's called Waiba, and it's a motorcycle that can move freely on the sea of clouds. Ha ha ha, yes, Peja, who was standing aside, smiled awkwardly. Although this Waiba belonged to him, he still couldn't control it well after such a long time, and it fell directly under the feet of these guests. It was really rude. Uncle, can you lend me this powerful bully to play with? Nami's eyes lit up when she looked at this powerful machine. Pygea scratched his head, showing a look of embarrassment. It's possible, but it's still very difficult to control the Waiba. Even for people like us who live in Beibaihi, if we want to be proficient in controlling it, we have to learn for at least 10 or 8 years. Before he finished speaking, he heard a rumbling sound, and Nami had already rushed out on Waiba, and even made a skillful drifting action. She is too exaggerated. Nochigao stood next to Peja with a proud expression. Nami has had some talent in sailing since she was a child. It is normal for her to be able to control this powerful one. This is not some talent. Pygea looked at Nami, who was still in the sea of clouds, and murmured to himself, with a complicated look on his face. Everyone, you are all guests from Qinghai, why don't you come and sit at our house and try the local specialties? Okay, Nuo Chigao and others readily agreed. Although Alan doesn't have much impression of the plot here in his previous life, isn't the biggest boss on the entire island Enel. Even if something happens, he is confident that he can handle it with all his strength. After passing through the dense jungle and walking up a few dozen meters of ladder, you can see a towering building. Everyone, please come in. Paige made an invitation gesture in front, and after everyone entered, a girl with blonde hair in 2 braids and a high-necked dress and miniskirt walked out of the kitchen. Father, is this a guest from Qinghai? Hello everyone, I am Cornies, please have tea. The voice was so gentle that all the girls' eyes lit up and they all came to greet her. The gentle beauty was a match for both men and women. Guys, wait a minute. Guests are here today, I have to cook a few more dishes. Cornies returned to the kitchen with a polite word, and Paige also sent in the salvaged harvest. Father, do you really want this? Cornies, who was still busy in the kitchen, had a trace of hesitation on her face. Although there were regulations on the Sky Island, this was the first time she met a foreigner from Qinghai. Thinking of the rules promulgated by God, she felt uncomfortable and even a little sad. Paige didn't speak, just sighed, and then shook his head. They are just ordinary people, how can they resist God's will? Alan was playing with various shellfish placed in the living room with great interest, and heard Nokigao's voice in his heart. The emotions of the father and daughter are very complicated, including tension, guilt, fear, and anger. Don't worry, I'm here. Alan was not as capable as Nokia, and could directly transmit sounds in his heart. He could only rub her head and comfort her softly. Okay, then I'll go to the beach and wait for Nami. Nokigao nodded. She still believed in Alan. Since Alan said it was okay, it must be okay. Let's go, I'll go take a look too. At this time, Alan only remembered that the Straw Hats were separated, and too much time had passed and he had forgotten the specific situation. However, he only has one fighting force on this ship. In any case, it is better to stay together. Robin and Vivi looked at each other. The two women did not go out. Instead, they sat firmly on the sofa, chatting with Paige, and learned some common sense about Sky Island. Hi, Alan, Nakigao. This power tyrant is really fun. Nami, who was driving back from the sea at high speed, waved excitedly towards Alan and Nokigao. Suddenly, a figure appeared from behind her and flew towards her at high speed. Malicious. Nokigao's face turned ugly for a moment, and Alan's face also darkened. He stared at the guy riding a big purple bird who kept approaching Nami, and stepped directly towards them. As he ran forward, Every time his feet stepped down, a layer of ice would form on the sea of clouds, allowing him to use the force to continue moving forward. Alan, why are you running over here? What's wrong? Nami, who was still riding on Waiba, looked in surprise at Alan, who was getting closer and closer to her in front of her, and also noticed the ugly expression on his face. In an instant, the two of them passed by each other. Nami controlled the viper to forcefully turn a corner and swung its tail across the sea of clouds. Only then did he notice the man wearing a pilot's hat flying over on a big bird. Who is that? Staring at Alan, who was running, Shira, who was sitting on the bird, showed a trace of disdain on his face. The guy who entered the country illegally actually dares to face the priest head-on. In the name of God Enel, the priest of my rope trial, today, Sky Knight Shira will kill you, spear of fire. Rebay, who was holding the spear in Shira's hand, instantly released heat, turning the entire spear into a fire spear. But when he was about to take action, his expression froze. The hard network actually failed, and he couldn't judge Alan's next move. But at this time, the arrow had to be fired on the string, and he could only use the greatest strength to stab Alan with the spear in his hand. Bang! Alan's armor-covered fist directly met his weapon, starting from the tip of the spear to shatter, all the way to the spear body, and then to Shira, who just showed a surprised look. Frost appeared on his body, and then the whole person seemed to be piled up by broken snow, turning into pieces of frost and disappearing between the sky and the earth. After all, Nami and Nokigao were still there, and Alan didn't want to make it too bloody. Hey, Enel, I know you can hear me. Isn't it a bit too shameful to let these wastes take action? How about you just come over here and let's talk about it? As the god of Sky Island, the master of Thunder Fruit and Hard Network, Enel must be monitoring the entire island, of which Alan is certain. Unfortunately, after waiting for a few seconds, there was no response. Speechlessly, Alan accompanied Nami and Nokigao back to the beach. Come on, let's go get something to eat, and then we'll kill this guy. After what happened just now, Nami and Nokigao also knew that this island was not just a vacation, but also had certain dangers, so they immediately followed Alan obediently. They wouldn't let Alan worry about such a trivial matter. Chapter 71. What does that guy do? Why did he attack me? As the three of them walked up, Nami chattered and asked questions. I just heard him say what kind of knight or Shira he was, but I didn't hear anything else clearly. Clang. Alan opened the door and talked to Nami and entered the room. However, Cornies, who had just come out of the kitchen, was surprised and the coffee cup in her hand fell to the ground. What's wrong, Miss Cornies? Is there something wrong with this Shira? Robin looked at Alan and then at Cornies, with a somewhat confused expression. Anyone with a discerning eye would know at a glance that there was something wrong with this Shira. Could just a name scare Cornies like this? No, it's okay. Cornies waved her hands in panic, and then hurriedly knelt down to clean up the debris on the ground. Don't worry, even if something happens, it will be fine. I'm afraid you will never see him again. As soon as these words came out, everyone in the room looked at Nokigao, who spoke, and the latter shrugged. That guy wanted to sneak attack Nami, but Alan has already taken care of him. Has it been done by? That's one of the 4 god-tier officials. Paige looked at Alan dully, and Cornies took 2 steps back in horror. There was no color on her face, and her body was trembling slightly. So, you killed Priest Shira, right? Although he was extremely frightened, Pygea still took a chance and asked Alan tentatively. Yeah, what's wrong with the priest? Even if Enel appears here, it's not a big deal. Alan casually picked up a piece of fruit and put it into his mouth, not paying any attention to the guy who made them terrified when they heard his name. Oops. Cornies and Paige's expressions changed at the same time, and they ran outside the house like crazy, shouting as they ran, quickly. God's judgment is coming. They had forgotten how long it had been since they had met someone who dared to call the god Enel by his first name, but the sense of horror engraved in their bones made them clear that something terrible would definitely happen next. Nami and the others looked at the father and daughter in confusion, but did not move at all. If even Alan couldn't protect them from God's judgment, even running away would be of no use. Enel, there's no need to play tricks with these ordinary people. I'll come and play with you later. Or do you just have the energy to smack your teeth with the weak? Alan shouted directly to the sky, his tone full of disdain. The face of Enel, who was far away in the divine position, changed, and he casually snapped his fingers, and the energy group that was originally gathered by the thunder and lightning above Cornus's house instantly dissipated. Come on, let me have some fun on this boring island. Is everything okay? Cornys and Paige looked blankly at the clouds above, looked at each other again, and rubbed their eyes at the same time, as if they couldn't believe the scene they saw. Is there anyone who dares to provoke God like this? Enel hasn't been executed yet. Mr. Allen, what are you? Cornys didn't know what to say. The residents of every empty island are suppressed by Enel's rules. Their original task is to guide Allen and others to separate. Some people will be hostages, and the other people will participate in the priest's trial. But now it seems that no guidance is needed. Uren and the others are going to challenge the god Enel. But these Qinghai people really don't look like strong men. They have no idea how powerful Enel is. If one day, Enel is really overthrown, that would be really great. However, how can mortals fight against the gods who control thunder? It's nothing. Originally, we went to Sky Island to find Enel. We can stretch our muscles after eating. Alan waved his hand carelessly, and while Cornys and the two were in a state of confusion, they ate a meal of special delicacies from Sky Island. Then everyone got on the boat together and prepared to go to Enel. Guys, if you really want to go to the Holy Land, I actually have another way, which will be more convenient. Cornys hesitated for a moment, then spoke after Alan and others got on the boat. You mean, if they really want to go to the Holy Land to challenge God, it will be faster this way? Pygea responded and nodded. What? Before Alan and the others could speak, there was a shaking below the boat, and a huge black shadow rose from under the sea of clouds. Unfortunately, under the forced burst of Alan's Conqueror's hockey, it was suppressed and unable to move even before it could move. What is this? Nami and the girls looked down curiously as they grabbed the side of the boat. A huge red creature was right below them. Even the sailboat was much smaller than it. This is our Baibihai specialty, super fast shrimp. Pygea was the first to react, took a step forward, and silently stood in front of Cornys. Normally, as soon as it appears, it will take you to the altar of the sanctuary. After arriving at the altar, you only need to move southwest to reach the location of the god Enel. But something seems to have gone wrong now, and it won't move. Quote. Several women looked at Alan at the same time. They couldn't feel Conqueror's domineering presence, but they definitely knew that it was Alan. Okay, just know what it's going to do. Hey, take us away. Alan cast his gaze below the boat. The Super Express shrimp, who was still pretending to be dead below, was startled. He quickly lifted the boat support gently, then raised it above his head and began to accelerate slowly. Hey, Cornish, we'll come back to you after we finish it. Nami happily waved to the father and daughter who were still standing on the beach. Cornys smiled reluctantly and watched the Super Express shrimp speed away with a few people, but there was a bit of disappointment on her face. Father, do you think it is really right to send them there? Pygea sighed, with a trace of unbearability in his eyes. There is no other way. Even if we don't take the initiative to send them there, we still have to guide them. God's decree cannot be violated. Besides, a priest has died. We have had contact with these Qinghai people, and we are very likely to be implicated. Quote. Since something might happen to both the left and right, it's better to send them there. It seems that Mr. Allen did not suffer any damage after killing a priest, so maybe he can really defeat Enel. Did you really see it? In the Union village under a cloud, a man wiping his weapon raised his head. This guy has tattoos around his left eye and left shoulder. He wears a grass skirt on his lower body, and his expression looks very vicious. Ah, I definitely saw it. Originally I just wanted to sneak attack the group of Qinghai people who broke in, but I didn't expect that they killed Shiro with one move and threatened to deal with Enel. Okay then, call everyone together. As a great warrior of the Sandians, War Ghost Weber holds a very high position in the tribe. Weber, should we wait any longer? Let's see the outcome of the battle between Qinghai and Enel. Lackey, who was standing nearby with a black ponytail and purple clothes, had a trace of worry on his face. Over the years, they have become too aware of Enel's power, but the four priests are not something they can easily deal with. Weber snorted and glanced sideways at Lackey. How can the people of Qinghai be trusted? When they realize how powerful Enel is, they will flee for their lives in a hurry. By then it will be too late. Now that there is one less official among the 4 god-tier officials, we must use this opportunity to kill a few more Enel-Itzir subordinates. Weber is right. We must seize the opportunity now that we have the numerical advantage. A group of warriors from the Shandia tribe echoed one after another. The only land above the sky is their hometown, so they hate everyone who occupies that land. You have to fight with all your strength, otherwise you will lose. Lackey, if you are not sure, you don't have to go. Let the others prepare, and we will set off. Weber made the final decision directly, looking firmly into the distance, as if he could see Enel through the clouds. No, I'm fine. Lackey immediately followed everyone's lead and walked outside. After the super-fast shrimp put Alan and others on the altar together with the boat, they quickly sank to the bottom of the water and disappeared. So we're going to hike to where that god is. Nami looked left and right in confusion, surrounded by large trees hundreds of meters high, with lush branches and leaves that almost covered the entire sky. Just follow me. After defeating Enel, we will have a new ship. You will be satisfied by then. Looking at Alan winking at her, Nami's eyes suddenly widened. She suddenly remembered the story that Alan had mentioned to her before, the story of the golden ship. You mean the golden ship? Click. A burst of lightning flashed in the air, and Alan instantly appeared above Nami, casually pushing aside the falling lightning. Enel, do you want to die? Alan looked at the sky, his face a little gloomy. He originally wanted to accompany Nami and the others and walk to Enel's side as if they were just taking a walk to see the scenery, but he didn't expect that guy would dare to attack Nami. I originally wanted to deal with those annoying mosquito-like harassers first, but I didn't expect that you have verbally offended me again and again. In this case, I will deal with you first. A dazzling light flashed, and Enel, wearing a white turban and bare upper body, appeared directly above them, looking down at the people below, his eyes filled with contempt. Fighting here, that's okay. I originally wanted to conquer you, but you dared to attack Nami, which will inevitably make you suffer a little. Alan moved his neck a few times, and there was a crisp sound of bone friction. It's a big deal. Before he finished speaking, his eyes widened unconsciously. Alan had appeared in front of him before he knew it, and punched him hard in the chest. Even though Enel had the super-strong domineering power of Shinwang, he still couldn't catch Eren's movements. He only had time to elementalize his body, but was directly restrained by armament. The whole person was blasted to the island and broke several big trees. Ahem, you can actually hit me. Enel looked at Alan, who was standing in front of him with a gloomy face, and stretched out his hand to wipe the corner of his mouth, where there was already a trace of blood. Don't you really think that you can call yourself a god just by relying on Logia's devil fruit? You don't even know how to be armed and domineering. So what? Here, I am God. Enel stared, clenched his fists, and looked at Alan with murderous intent in his red eyes. God. Alan glanced at him sideways, and quickly approached. After dodging the golden rod in Enel's hand, he reached out and grabbed his arm, and slammed it to the ground. Bang, 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 bang. After hitting him back and forth a few times, he was thrown away in a direction away from Nami and the girls, and then curled his lips in disdain. What a weak god. Enel turned into thunder in midair, stabilized his figure, and looked at Eren fiercely. Originally, he planned to come over and use absolute force to directly punish this guy who dared to offend Kamui, but he didn't expect to lose such a big person. Boom! A waist-thick thunder and lightning flashed, and a chubby figure fell down in the distance. Alan didn't pay attention. The guy seemed to be the priest under Enel. Who told you to hold back a little bit? You have seen your boss's embarrassing appearance. How dare you do this to me? God. In an instant, extremely powerful energy gathered in Enel's hands, and countless lightning arcs even escaped from his fingers. Sanctions. Fully armed in color. The dark-armed domineering energy instantly covered Eren's body, and the next second he rushed forward against the thunder and lightning, punching Enel. However, the latter also gained wisdom after every experience, and his body moved to other positions instantly. Alan's punch just now almost didn't break his internal organs, and even when he stood up now, he was still in pain. If we compare speed alone, in the entire One Piece world, Kizaru and this guy can compete. If he really wanted to run away, even Alan wouldn't be able to catch up with him, and I don't know how Luffy cheated and killed him. Enel, incendiary cannon. An angry voice came from behind, followed by a violent blue flame spurting towards Enel. Normally, Enel could easily extinguish this kind of flame by just discharging electricity, but this time he directly avoided it with elemental elements, then attached his own lightning to the flame, and adjusted its direction towards Loon. Thunder cannon. Alan was stunned. He really didn't expect Enel to be able to do such a good job. It's quite interesting. However, this kind of powerful attack is almost useless in front of him, and it can be blasted away with a direct punch. Enel, I will kill you today. War Ghost Weber looked at Enel coldly. They already knew which priest was dead, so the others went to encircle and suppress the three priests. He went straight to Wonglong and rushed towards the place where the lightning and thunder just happened. As expected, he caught up. Boom boom boom. The thunder cannons scattered by Alan were scattered in various places, causing bursts of explosions. Are you going to join forces to fight against this god? A touch of disdain rose on Enel's face. Although he had some miscalculations about Alan's combat power, this did not affect his inner pride. Even if his body's defense is not good, he can still be invincible as long as he is not hit by that Alan. Joining forces to beat you. Do you think too highly of yourself? Alan crossed his arms and glanced at him speechlessly. Weber, who was standing behind Enel, saw that his attack had no effect, his pupils were slightly dilated, and he frowned and stared at Enel's back. Enel turned around slowly, with a hint of ridicule on his face. How many times do you have to be defeated before you understand that I am? I am the incarnation of thunder and lightning. You mortals still try to disobey my thoughts. What kind of god are you? Enel, lousy must kill you today. Weber stared at Enel angrily, his tone full of reluctance. The wind shells on his slippers spurted out the stored air volume, allowing him to move quickly behind Enel again. Ants are ants. Even if we meet, we can't see the difference between them. Enel's set of combos just now really made Enel feel a little uncomfortable, and he didn't even want to mention the word refresher for a short time. Seeing Weber, who was still trying to attack him, Enel no longer had the cat and mouse mood, and his eyes changed accordingly. The look in his eyes at this moment was completely different from the previous teasing and ridicule. There was really a trace of murderous intent in his eyes. Alan's attack just now made the god of Sky Island deeply fearful. Now that Webb dared to come up to him, it became an outlet for him. Enel, lousy will take off your head today. There was a trace of madness in Weber's eyes. The fragments of sea tower stone under his feet were his greatest confidence. As long as there was physical contact and Enel's fruit ability could be suppressed, it would be possible to injure him or kill him directly. You go and dream in hell. 30 million volt thunder beast. Before Weber could get closer, Enel had already struck the taiko drum on the left side of his back, and a large amount of lightning that had been stored in advance spurted out. As it attacked Weber, it formed a giant thunder wolf and swallowed him up, in the belly. Ah! Weber's screams in the thunder and lightning resounded throughout the forest, and Alan in the distance could faintly smell the burning smell. It was not a pleasant smell, and he frowned unconsciously. I remember that in the original novel, this guy seemed to have attacked Enel and almost killed him. Why was he killed right after he came out? And you? Enel's eyes fell on Alan again, and the way he gritted his teeth looked a little ferocious. When it comes to actually facing Enel, Alan is still a little bit tricky. It's not that he can't beat him, but that he can't catch him. If you can use the fruit ability, you can find an opportunity to freeze him directly, but now you can only use physical skills and three-color hockey, so you have to seize the opportunity to get close. Enel also discovered that Alan's physical skills were not strong enough for him to resist, and he kept beating the taiko drum behind him with the golden stick in his hand. 60 million volts Brontosaurus. A silently roaring dragon-shaped thunder twisted its body and rushed toward Alan. Don't use such boring tricks to embarrass yourself. Armed color chop. As Alan roared angrily, his right fist condensed extremely strong armed domineering energy, and he punched out as if Xuanwu Xuanjin was carrying a huge force to break through the river. The powerful fist wind directly knocked Enel's the thunder dragon was completely annihilated, and he himself turned into thunder and lightning and hid far away. There's no way. Alan was born too long ago, and he doesn't know if Marine has developed the 6 forms. Anyway, he has never met Marine who uses the 6 forms, let alone learn them secretly, so he can only fumble and create taijutsu on his own. Hey, don't show off your rubbish moves with tens of millions of volts. If there are any higher ones, let me enjoy them too. Alan looked at Enel with a disdainful attitude. He remembered that this guy should have a melee skill, just like the great Buddha form of the Warring States period. A little higher, okay. Enel's eyes swept across the thunder arcs still scattered in the air in front of him, and he looked at Alan with an unprecedented serious expression. If you join me, we can take the ark together and go to the boundless land. How about that? No, lousy is not Chang'e. Why would I go to the moon with you? Alan curled his lips with some disdain. This stupid boy who had never seen the world thought that the moon was the endless earth, and the Qinghai Sea under the Bai Sea was infinitely bigger than the moon. Although he didn't understand the meaning of the words in Alan's mouth, Enel clearly felt the disdain in his tone. The anger that his dream was being despised by others rushed into Enel's mind instantly, causing him to break through his defenses. 20 million volts Thor. This move allowed Enel to release all the 200 million volts stored in his body. All the lightning was wrapped around his body, and his whole body was enlarged dozens of times, becoming a giant formed by lightning. Go to hell. The thunder god turned into Enel, carbonized all the surrounding huge trees into black. Countless thunder arcs were beating, and he pushed towards Aren with a powerful palm. As he moved, the surrounding ground shook, all the trees along the way collapsed, and the birds and animals in the woods also fled away in fear. I've been waiting for you to do this. There was a trace of excitement on Alan's face. He bent his knees and half-squatted in parallel, his muscles tightened, and his armed domineering energy gathered in his shoulders and elbows, and he faced Enel's Thor. Armed color Broken Mountain. This move was originally based on the Iron Mountain knife that often appeared in Alan's previous movies and TV shows, but later an idol star once again made this move popular by shaking his shoulders, but it did not affect Alan's full body armor in the world of pirates. It works out. It's just that I occasionally feel a little awkward when making movements. Boom. The advanced weapon color with black thunder arcs collided with the thunder fruit ability with blue and purple thunder arcs. In an instant, centered on the position where they collided, a huge shock wave spread out in an arc shape. Too bad. Before the ferocious look on Enel's face dissipated, it instantly turned into surprise and fear. His eyes clearly saw that Aren had broken Thor's arm and was approaching him. But now that the moves are old, there is no way to change the movements immediately. Roar. Just when Alan was about to catch Enel, a huge creature rushed over with a roar from one side. It was a python with a head bigger than a building. There was a strong fishy smell in its mouth, which was pungent from a distance. Its bloody mouth was about to swallow the two of them. Alan hesitated for a moment. He didn't really want to enter the body of this animal. In just a moment of hesitation, Enel immediately seized the opportunity. His whole body turned into thunder and lightning, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. He almost caught Enel, but was disturbed by this big snake at the critical moment, and Aren was in an inexplicable bad mood. Besides, people can be friends, but animals can't. This snake grew to such a big size on the empty island, and could even blatantly bite Alan and the two of them. It did it many times before proving such a thing. In this case, before it could react, Alan had appeared behind it, with a palm covering its skin. Countless ice crystals spilled out from Alan's palm, and in a few seconds, the big snake was turned into a work of art formed by ice crystals. It shouldn't be too anxious to annihilate it. If Alan remembered correctly, it still had a lot of gold in its belly. The golden ship Noah is what Alan prepares for his team next. It cannot be given to Nami, so the golden vessel in this snake is his gift to Nami. Alan, have you dealt with him? When Alan returned to the ship, Nami and the other girls were sitting on the deck chatting. When they saw him coming back, they just asked casually. It has to be said that after experiencing a series of things, Nami and the others' confidence in Alan has reached a blind level. Not yet, he accidentally ran away, but it doesn't matter, I will put a protective shield on you and go catch him. This is what Alan just remembered. Enel has no bottom line. If he sneaks up on Nami and the girls when he catches him, he will really regret it. With the swing of his arm, a giant translucent sphere appeared around the entire sailboat, wrapping it tightly. This sailboat is not as important to Alan as the Mary is to the Straw Hat Pirates. Alan did not even give it a name, but protecting Nami and the girls is the most important. Look good, Alan, is this also your ability? Nami looked at the ice crystals reflecting 7 colors of light under the sunlight, and couldn't help but want to reach out and touch it, but Alan stopped him with quick eyesight and quick hands. The cold air on this ice is controlled by me and is not released. You must not take the initiative to touch it. Nami, who was stopped by Alan, smiled awkwardly and stepped back. She wasn't that curious, it was just that Alan unconsciously relaxed here. After safely protecting the women, Alan quickly found Enel's location with his knowledge and domineering attitude. Although Enel's observation color, which can cover the entire Sky Island, is definitely not bad, his development of observation color hockey is only at the level of predicting the opponent's movements, let alone the more advanced observation and killing. How come this Qinghai man is so strong? It's totally wrong. I am a god, a unique god. Fool, in this case you just accompany this empty island to destroy it. As he muttered something in his mouth, Enel appeared in a cave in the god's domain. An extremely huge ship had been docked here. The sunlight shining in from the top of the cave reflected on the hull of the ship, emitting a dazzling golden light. Walking to the throne on the deck, Enel placed both hands on the spheres at both ends of the throne, and activated the Thunder Fruit ability at full power. 200 million volts discharge. Maxim, set sail. As the lightning in his body continued to charge into the hull, the propellers on the hull began to rotate rapidly, and the hull slowly left the ground. Ouch, it's a bit embarrassing for a god to want to escape like this. A slightly teasing voice appeared next to Enel. The latter's expression froze and he slowly turned his head to look. Alan was leaning on the side of the ship and raising his eyebrows at him. How is it possible? Why didn't my hard network find you? Enel panicked. The hard network was his biggest barrier in battle, but he didn't expect it to fail in Alan's case. Qinghai people, what do you want to do? Enel's face looked a little unwilling. Originally, he wanted to pursue the boundless land, but he didn't expect to meet such a strong Qinghai man before leaving. Now, let alone destroying the empty island, there is a question mark as to whether we can leave. Nothing, I just want you to join my men. Alan shrugged his shoulders and showed an indifferent attitude, but Enel directly broke through. I am a god, the god who lives in the divine domain of Apayado and rules over the entire Sky Island. You actually want me to be your subordinate? Looking at the dizzy Enel, Alan was really speechless for this severe Chunabu patient. But to deal with such people, you still have to defeat magic with magic. Hey, the gods I heard rule the world and then open up new divine realms. You were defeated by others and ran away to the so-called boundless land in despair. What kind of god do you think you are? The disdain and contempt in Alan's eyes deeply hurt Enel's heart, and the memories of his childhood buried deepest also came up. 20 million volts Thor, the thunder god form that had appeared before once again enveloped Enel's body. At this time, there was a hint of ferocity on his face, and a ball of compressed thunder and lightning energy quickly gathered in his right hand. Even the deck he stepped on was cracked. Sign. Alan didn't care at all. He directly covered his body with armed colors and kicked the thunder ball into the sky like a football. The sound of the explosion made the people far away on the empty island tremble involuntarily, thinking that the gods were angry again and were preparing to punish them. Enel, I will give you a chance to take this ship and use your strongest move. If you can defeat me, I will give up the idea of capturing you as my subordinate. If I defeat you, you will enter me obediently. In my team, I will teach you how to become stronger until your strength can really dominate the entire sea. When the time comes, I will definitely not stop you from going to the boundless land. If you want to defeat Enel, you only need to catch him at close range now, but if you want to conquer the Ikise Chunabu patient, you need to set him up and then defeat him where he is best. As for letting him go to the boundless land in the future, Alan will definitely not give him this ship. If he has the ability to go, then go. Anyway, Alan didn't know where he was at that time, and one more subordinate and one less subordinate would be fine. Okay, this is what you said. Enel's face showed a trace of ruthlessness, and he drove Maxim to fly into the sky, then spread his arms. Start, despair. Following his order, a large number of black clouds suddenly appeared in a chimney-like position on the top of the ship, rising into the sky and then gathering together. This is the ultimate function of this arc, called the savior of this world in despair. Seeing the proud look on Enel's face, Alan rubbed his arms speechlessly, with goosebumps faintly appearing on them. This patient with severe Chunabu is really embarrassing. As the clouds became thicker and thicker, the entire island became extremely depressing. People stood on the street one after another with panic expressions on their faces. Alan didn't pay too much attention to it. In the original book, Luffy was able to defeat Enel through a so-called pseudo-physical proposition that rubber is non-conductive. There's no reason why he couldn't defeat Enel by pressing Garp's body and beating him. Countless thunderclouds continue to spread in the sky, and the energy contained in them is becoming more and more powerful. The overflowing thunder branches shattered the plants on Apayado, and a large number of flames appeared in this centuries-old primitive jungle. Ha ha ha, this is the power that God should control. Enel used his fruit ability to connect to the thunderclouds above. The full energy was something he had never felt before, as if the whole world was in his hands and could be easily destroyed at will. How else could I ask you to go to Qinghai to experience the world? You look like you haven't seen much of the world. Although Alan said it very easily, the Conqueror's Haki and armed Haki in his body had basically been activated to the extreme, and he was ready for a full blow. Just standing on the ground below, looking at Enel who was still hanging in the air and laughing wildly. I hope your fists can be as hard as your mouth. Randomly mobilizing some thundercloud energy, Enel stood arrogantly in the sky, pointing the golden stick in his hand at Alan. This Qinghai native made him feel humiliated and defeated for the first time since he ate the devil fruit. Enel's obsession was to use the thundercloud created by this spaceship to blast him into pieces. An extremely huge black sphere slowly fell from above. Even the golden ship Maxim was as big as a green bean in front of it. The energy contained in it made even Alan feel a little nervous, shock. Without Sanji to destroy the machine inside the ship, the thunderball condensed by Enel at this time is even much larger than the original. Let this thunderous attack destroy you and this annoying island. Facing what he had always wanted to do, Enel became inexplicably solemn and turned his body into thunder and lightning, guiding the thunder above to approach Uren. That's it, let this farce end here. In any case, Nami and the others were still down there, and Alan couldn't guarantee whether his ice protective shield could fully protect them, so Alan started to accumulate strength early. The end of domineering martial arts and haunting souls. After this move was fully charged, Alan's right arm was trembling continuously due to Alan's physique, and the muscles remained in a state of slight cracking and then healing. If he can use the Xuanwu fruit ability, he can completely control this move in his human animal form. But without using the fruit ability now, the current state is already the strongest attack that Alan can take. Facing the thunderball above, Alan kicked off his feet and flew into the air. At this time, he clenched his hands into fists, crossed his arms in front of his chest, and quickly rotated his body, wrapping Conquerors and armed Haki around his body like a tornado, gradually forming a destructive force. When the body's rotation became faster and faster, Alan swung out his right fist violently, directly blasting out the tornado formed by the intertwining of the two domineering energies. The principle of point Arankar was vividly demonstrated at this time. Starting from the point where the tip of the tornado came into contact with Lei Ying's thunder ball, traces of fragmentation began to appear on the entire sphere, and flashes of thunder radiated from it, and then swallowed by a tornado again. Buzz buzz. The two-color domineering force blasted out by Alan continued to stir inside Lei Ying, causing more and more cracks on it, and finally shattered. Suddenly, the entire sky was filled with dazzling light, making it difficult for everyone to open their eyes. The next second, countless thunderclouds were dispersed by the crazy explosion shock wave, and the sun once again enveloped the entire island. Enel, who was still standing in midair, looked up at the sun above in a daze, still in disbelief. Hey, kid, you lost. Pack up and get ready to board the ship. This golden ship of yours will be ours from now on. Alan appeared next to Enel, holding his neck with his armed-colored right hand. No. Impossible. I am a god. How could a god lose? You are nothing but a god. You are just a kid who deceives yourself. There are many people in Qinghai who are stronger than you. Follow Laozi and go where the real strong men go. Feeling the slightly strong hand on his neck, Enel's mouth twitched. I'm just a little bit behind you. After I learn how domineering your armed colors are, I will still challenge you. Enel was still a little dissatisfied. After being a god for many years, how could he be willing to be someone else's younger brother? Let's not talk about anything else. Do you admit that you lost? Ignoring the disappointed expression of this severe Chunabu, Alan pulled him in front of him and asked coldly. I admit it. Enel lowered his head. Being held in someone's hands now made him feel more uncomfortable than killing him, but if he lost, he would lose. Congratulations to host for completing the series of tasks, Road to Strength 5, and taking a step forward on the road to becoming the world's top powerhouse in One Piece. Mission Reward. Tide Summoner Shark Princess Character Card. Reward Description. Nami is a powerful young Vastaya sea tribe. She has completed the sacred ritual and can guide the raw energy of the ocean, command the wild energy of the tide itself, and can also be summoned with the Titicaler staff in her hand. Power from the ocean. The character card can directly give the user the ability to summon Tide Shark Princess. Before Alan could ask the system, a reminder that the task was completed had already been sent out. Titicaler Samhain. Nami's character card. After this reward is given, Alan doesn't need to think about who to give it to. Originally, he was thinking of finding a devil fruit that could control the weather, such as the union fruit, for Nami to eat. But now it seems that there is no need for it at all. This is her natal character card, and the reward must be for her. She used it. Moreover, since the system has determined that the mission was successful, there is no need for Alan to pretend. Looking at Enel in front of him, Alan gently let go of his hand, and the black gown attached to his body out of thin air, and the Xuanwu fruit came to him. The increase he brought was still extremely strong. Don't you think you are just slightly behind? Just now I just used the power of my body, and now with the devil fruit ability, you can attack me at will. I will only give you one chance. As long as you can hurt me, I will let you go. You leave. Enel stared at Alan in front of him. In fact, even if Alan didn't say anything, he could feel it in his heart network. At this time, Alan's aura was at least twice as strong as before. What kind of monster is this? In the battle just now, he didn't even use half of his strength. Even as a devil fruit user, he didn't even use his ability. This is your last chance to take action, come on, Enel. Alan's tone was very calm. In the human animal form of the Xuanwu fruit, he felt much more stable. If he doesn't resist, it's not impossible to hurt him. Enel looked at Alan, who was not even in a defensive posture not far away. His eyes moved slightly. 20 million volts of thunder gun. This move was inspired by Alan's move just now. Originally, Enel's development of the Thunder Fruit ability was all about the momentum and state of the moves, such as Thunder Beast, Thunder Bird, Thunder Dragon, and Thunder God. But Alan's move that defeated Lei Ying just now made his eyes light up. The greater the momentum, the greater the power. Even though Enel didn't understand the principle of using Arankar, he imitated Alan and compressed his lightning to form a giant gun and threw it towards Alan. It's interesting. Enel's talent is quite good, which makes Alan quite satisfied. After all, he will be his subordinate next. Facing the giant gun that dared to attack with thunder arcs and piercing sounds, Alan judged its landing point and slowly turned around in Enel's surprised eyes. The next second, the thunder gun hit Alan directly on the back, making a sharp explosion, followed by a violent explosion. When the smoke dissipated, although some surrounding plants were burned to carbon ash by the high temperature generated by lightning, there was no trace of scars on Alan's body, and even the black robe on his body was not damaged. Is it true that you can't even break through the defense? Enel looked at Alan's back blankly and murmured to himself. This time he was really convinced. Unexpectedly, in order to convince him, the other party even used his back to receive his full blow. This can't break the defense, so what else can you say? Alan was secretly sweating in his heart. I didn't expect Enel to have such a new move. Although in this state, even attacking from the front may not be able to break his defense, but it would be too unreasonable to retreat after being beaten and then check if there are any injuries. How is it? Do you need to say anything more? Alan put away the changes in his fruit abilities. If he reached this point and Enel had any other ideas, he wouldn't need to say more and just take action. Although it is difficult to find competent subordinates, there are still only 1 or 2 left. No need, you will be the boss from now on. Enel also kept his word, showed his cards directly, and admitted this. Rather than bowing his head and being someone else's subordinate, he now wants to learn that armed domineering spirit from Alan. The original mentality of being invincible is so lonely has been completely broken by Alan. Now he just wants to become stronger, and it is best to beat this Alan severely. The fight is over, and now comes the harvest time. God knows how excited Nami was when she saw this huge golden spaceship appearing above them. Anyway, in the eyes of other people, this girl's eyes were shining with gold. If Enel hadn't lowered the spaceship in time, Nami would have learned moonwalk without any teacher. Is this the ship made of gold you said? We will be riding this ship in the future. At this time, Nami was just like the beautiful Sanji in the original novel, her eyes glowing with golden light as she rubbed against Alan's body. No, 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 this ship is always sailing on it. We still have to sail on the sea. It's not that Alan's conscience found out that he really left this golden ship to Enel alone, but it was more convenient to walk on the sea for what he wanted to do and what he wanted to find. Although it is very fast in the sky, it is basically impossible to discern the exact direction and destination. So it is still up to Ren and the others to sail on the sea, with Enel controlling the ark and following them as a secret weapon. Moreover, as long as Enel fills up the energy in the ark at once, it can sail for a long time without delaying anything. There is a big snake in the jungle that has been frozen by me. Enel, you can take Nami and the others there and take out all the gold from its body, as well as the gold in your divine domain, and put it all into the ark. Go up there. Originally, Enel was still somewhat prejudiced against Nami and the girls, at least their strength was not high enough for him to treat them as equals. But when Alan unleashed his murderous intent, the guy gave up. The second disease is the second disease. If you are not afraid of death, you are not afraid of death. These are two different concepts. After asking Enel to take the 3 Nami girls to find gold and treasure, Alan also led Robin and appeared in the depths of a Piato. There are rows of ancient stone statues here, which look dilapidated in appearance, with a lot of moss attached to them. If you are here for sightseeing, this ruin-like altar has nothing to see at all, but for an archaeologist like Robin, this is the best scenery. The Madara characters carved on the stone statue are also telling Robin the history of this place and the legendary ruins of Shantora. After accompanying Robin to visit all these ruins, Alan's eyes inadvertently glanced at her cheek. Although Robin was very happy to see such a century-old relic, he still felt a little disappointed in his eyes. After all, she came here just for the historical text, but she walked all over the ruins and found nothing. Noticing Alan's gaze, Robin showed a smile. This is the first time for the captain to come here. It's normal not to know. Besides, there are only so many historical texts in the world, so it's not surprising that there aren't any here. Who said there is no more here? Looking at Robin, who was still looking for reasons for him, Alan suddenly felt a little funny. He reached out and rubbed the latter's hair, and then hugged her slender waist. Hold me, but don't let go and fall. As he spoke, Alan pushed his feet hard, jumped upwards, and landed on the huge vines the next second. Then he hugged Robin and ran towards the top of the vines as fast as he could. Robin didn't react at first, but after noticing Alan's movements, he seemed to understand something, and cast his expectant gaze in the direction of the top of the huge vine. After running for a minute at Alan's speed, passing through several layers of empty island clouds and at least several kilometers away, the two of them saw the magnificent bell tower standing on top of a huge island cloud. The entire bell tower is made of gold, with a base dozens of meters wide and a height of more than 20 meters. It is simply extremely shocking. Even when Alan stood in front of this bell tower, he couldn't help but sigh. Robin focused her attention on the historical text in the center of the base, and the words that seemed to be encrypted instantly attracted her attention. What does this ancient text say? Alan waited until Robin sighed and looked away before he came over and asked. It says the location of ancient weapon Poseidon, right? Robin hesitated for a moment, but still told Alan the truth, but before she could tell the answer, Alan put a finger on her lips and interrupted her. I don't need to know that, I am the most powerful weapon. Feeling the touch on her own lips, Robin's face looked a little unnatural, and there was a touch of rosy on her cheeks, and then she nodded gently. This kind of strong man with a touch of gentleness is really charming. Although his gentleness is only high for Nami and Noki, Robin can also feel it deeply when he is next to him. By the way, there is a sentence from Roger on it. I am here to lead this text to the final place. Suddenly, Robin remembered the above passage and specially translated it to Alan, but the latter shook his head disdainfully. I'm too lazy to listen to those riddlers playing charades. Regarding One Piece Roger, Alan doesn't have as big a filter as people of this generation. Those riddle words they say are pure pretense in Alan's eyes. What a blank 100 years of history, what Nika fruit, what destiny, are they important? As long as Marie Joa is defeated and the celestial dragons, 5 elders, and I am are killed, the rest won't be a problem at all. Let's go, I'll get this big guy down first. If Nami knows that I didn't bring such a good thing back to her, don't be angry with me. Alan patted Robin on the shoulder, walked around the base of the bell tower a few times, found a suitable angle, reached down, gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, and the entire bell tower began to rise slowly. He was finally lifted off the ground. Let's go, you don't need me to take you down there. Alan jumped down first and landed at the foothold of a huge vine hundreds of meters below. Hey, good guy, this thing is really not light. Looking at Alan's back below, and then thinking about the smile on his face when he talked about Nami, Robin couldn't help but feel a wave of envy in his heart, but thinking about his age and life experience, he still sighed softly. There was a sound, and the footsteps slid down lightly. Sometimes it's true that I was born before you were born, but you were already old when you were born. Come on, shall I refine this gold into suitable cubes for easy storage? Nami was still happily directing Enel below to refine all the damaged and irregular gold objects into gold bars for easy storage. As for the big snake, you can enter its body after breaking the ice crystals outside. Lay Yellerg. Hearing Nami's call, Enel's face flushed a little, but he still obeyed and followed the instructions. Nokigao sensed Enel's mood with some worry, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. The Chunabu plus arrogant man is actually quite simple, at least he doesn't have such serious thoughts and can be detected easily. Moreover, after knowing the fundamental reason why Alan was looking for him, Enel did not dare to offend Nami and Nuauchi-gao. Nami, look at this. Standing on the huge vine, Alan jumped down with the golden bell tower, stirring up countless smoke and dust before running into the jungle, shouting Nami's name from a distance. Bang! Even if Alan deliberately placed it gently, the bell tower of this weight still made a huge muffled sound, and the ground shook. Is this all made of gold? Everyone present was shocked, their eyes focused on the huge bell tower. Nami's eyes were a little blurry. She reached out and touched the base of the clock tower. The cold touch made her whole body excited. It was really gold. It seems that what Uncle Lizzie below said is really true. There really is the golden land Shantora here, and there is also a golden bell. Vivi's face was a little excited. During the few days on Gaia Island, she had a relatively good relationship with Mont Blanc Kulakai. Now that she saw this golden clock, she couldn't help but think of him. After hearing her words, Nami ran up to Alan and kissed him hard on the face, looking proud. Of course it's true. Alan said that there will be a golden ship and a golden city, so there will definitely be one. Vivi also smiled and was about to speak when she heard a sound piercing the air in the distance and a hoarse roar. Enel, go to hell. A ray of blue flames shot towards Enel, who was still doing metallurgy at the side. He instinctively wanted to turn into elements to avoid it, but he noticed Nami and the others standing behind him. In desperation, he could only mobilize the energy in his body. Thunder and lightning formed a shield to block the front. Under the sudden explosion, the faces of the women changed instantly, and they took a few steps back unconsciously. As that, the golden clock. After firing the incendiary cannon, Weber stared blankly at the clock tower next to Nami, his eyes as wide as copper bells. Sure enough, what our ancestors said about the golden city and the golden clock in Apayado is true. Give us back that clock. The skates under his feet spurted out gas, and Weber instantly rushed towards Nami, who was standing next to the golden clock from the side. Behind him, several figures rose up, and everyone rushed towards the direction of the golden clock with fanatical eyes. The ultimate goal pursued by the Sandians for hundreds of years is right in front of them. The mission of these warriors is right in front of them, and everyone is crazy. It's a pity that even a few meters apart is a natural chasm for them. Several people were struck by thunder falling from the sky before they even landed in midair. They were shocked on the outside and tender on the inside, and fell to the ground. That golden bell belongs to us, the Sandians, give it back to us. Webb, who was struck by lightning and fell to the ground, crawled vigorously on the ground towards the golden clock, his eyes fixed on Nami standing beside it. Give it back to us. Looking at Weber's appearance at this time, Nami and the other girls showed a hint of unbearability on their faces. Vivi even wanted to stand up and say something, but what Alan said on the turtle came to her mind again, and she quickly forced herself to retreat. Go back. Yours. Alan appeared in front of Weber, raised his kick and kicked him away, hitting the men who fell behind him, and several of them rolled into a ball. Weber. The fair-looking woman with long black hair shouted in concern, and then cast her resentful eyes on Alan. The latter snorted disdainfully. Although the system issued a side task to gain friendship, he did not have to complete it. After these people appeared, they directly attacked Nami. They had violated his reverse scale, so they would definitely not be able to stay. You guys. Weber struggled to get up, swaying and continued walking towards the bell tower of the golden clock. After Enel's thunder and lightning and Alan's attack before, it was now difficult for him to stand up steadily. Alan's face looked a little ugly, and he turned to look at Enel. Leave the ark down. Compared to Maxim, who Enel often calls, Alan still likes to call this ship that can sail in the sky ark. Looking up and watching the ark slowly falling, Alan immediately reached out and grabbed the base of the golden clock, lifted it over his head, and then jumped up. The huge force caused the ground under his feet to crack, setting off bursts of earth mist. You can't do this. Leave the golden clock behind. The man who was knocked down by lightning behind Weber suddenly stood up. The long knife in his hand instantly burst into flames, and his whole body slashed towards Alan as his skates started. Although they were not sure whether the golden bell really existed before, they still had an idea. If the golden bell is taken away by Alan now, there will really be no place to look for it. Clang! The flaming sword made of metal seemed to be made of wood in Alan's hands, and was easily broken into 2 pieces by one of his hands. What makes you think you can survive by yelling in front of me, or even attacking me? After Alan's hand crushed the burning sword, he directly grabbed the person's neck. Nami, let's go to the ship and have a look. We haven't visited this golden ship yet. We don't know what it looks like inside. Nokigao keenly felt the unbearable emotion in Nami's heart, and immediately took Nami's hand, climbed up the ladder to the deck of the ark, and then pulled her into the cabin. Nijigao, do you want to plead with the people below? Before Nami could finish speaking, Nokigao interrupted her expressionlessly. After seeing the latter nodding, Nokigao pondered for a few seconds, then grabbed Nami's shoulders with both hands and stared at her. I know you have a good heart, but have you ever thought that we are Alan's weakness? He will definitely agree if you ask, but what will we do in the future? When we get to this sea, we have to face many cruel things. Although Nochigao has been in Kokoja village and has never even been to the sea, her psychology is much more mature than Nami, who has been wandering in the East China Sea for nearly 10 years. This is also one of the fundamental reasons why Alan gave the fruit of the soul directly to Nokigao. No, Kamishili, Mantis. With Alan's slight exertion, under the horrified eyes of Weber and others, the guy with a mohawk was instantly frozen into an ice sculpture, and then shattered into powder and scattered in the wind. I want to kill you. I will definitely kill you. Sorry, you may not have that chance. Several Sandian warriors gritted their teeth and stared at Alan with red eyes. The latter shrugged indifferently, and then appeared in front of a man wearing a green military coat and a bamboo hat. Next to the man, he followed the same pattern and made him passively elementalized. Brahm, why are you so devilish? Why do you do this to us? Lackey, who was still standing by, was already bursting into tears. How could she not know that she and the others were no match for Alan? Facing him, she was even more desperate than facing Enel. You crazy people, you attacked me first, right? Since you started the war, don't say such childish words. Alan raised his eyebrows and turned Weber into an ice sculpture. Then he squatted in front of Lackey and pointed a finger between her eyebrows. Although you are pretty good looking, who made you stand on the opposite side of me? Besides, I haven't bought any of your figurines. It's a pity. Lackey didn't understand what Alan meant, but before she could ask a question, her vision went dark and she lost consciousness. Frost started to spread on Lackey's forehead from Alan's fingers, and then continued to freeze as his index finger slipped, and finally turned Lackey's entire body into a beautiful ice sculpture. The beauty is not bad, but it is indeed a pity. Put all the gold on the ship, Enel, and come with me to the empty island below. Yes. Alan glanced at Vivi, who had fallen into a sluggish state, with a look of unbearability in her eyes, gave an expressionless order, and then reached out to say hello to Enel. At this time, the civilians on Sky Island were still looking at the sky in panic on the street because of the black thunderclouds before. Even though the thundercloud has dissipated, they are still like frightened birds, fearing that something will happen again. Cornies, who was still looking up at the sky, suddenly heard a familiar voice beside her calling her name. Before she could turn around, she found that everyone around her was kneeling down with frightened expressions on their faces. God. The next second, Enel, who was still standing next to Alan, came into her eyes. The girl was startled. She wanted to kneel down involuntarily, but Alan stretched out his hand to stop her. This guy Enel has caused you a lot of trouble before. Now I have decided to take him to Qinghai. From now on you are free. In order to create a strong atmosphere, Alan even opened his arms, hoping to let the people of Kongdao feel the changes he had brought. But the whole street fell into silence. Everyone looked at each other and looked at each other. No one dared to make a sound first. Enel, who was standing next to Alan, felt that the pressure around his new boss was getting lower and lower, so he could only stand up awkwardly. Alan, what the Lord said is true. I am about to leave Beibei for Qinghai. From now on, you are free. In an instant, the whole street seemed to explode. Everyone's faces showed a look of ecstasy. Some people even started hugging each other in the street, with tears streaming down their faces. It was obvious that Enel was in these situations. How much oppression has been brought to these people in Kongdao? Side mission. Cornish completed. Congratulations to host for opening Corniz's heart and winning her heart. Task reward. 10 fairy beans. Reward description. The food cultivated by the cat fairy living on Kalen Tower has extremely strong recovery power. As long as the person is not dead, he can instantly restore physical strength and energy, readjust the body to its optimal state, and also it can treat external and internal injuries, and even regenerate broken limbs, but it can only treat injuries, not diseases. Look at you, what are you doing? Alan turned back and rolled his eyes at Enel, who also smiled awkwardly. Anyway, in his concept, as the god of Sky Island, why should he care about what these ordinary people think? Lord Alan, would you like to stay here overnight? We can have a grand banquet tonight to celebrate. To celebrate you, you will have a better journey ahead. Quote. Cornies felt that she had used all the reflexes she could use, and she should have answered this sentence, if Enel didn't glare at her. We will not attend the banquet. You can just celebrate on your own. I am here to inform you that Enel is leaving with me, and to find a way to get to Qinghai from you. Although the ark could fly, the sailboat that Alan and the others planned to board did not have the ability to fly. It rushed directly from the Bye-Bye Sea and could only be broken into pieces. Wow, this balloon is so big. The creatures on Sky Island are indeed very magical. What is the principle of this? 2 hours later, Nami and Nuochi were excitedly observing the huge balloon above the sailboat, leaning on the side of the ship and pointing, while Alan sat cross-legged on the deck speechlessly. He originally thought that the girls would accompany him on the sailboat, but Nami took them and whispered to them one by one, and then they all ran to the ark, leaving him sitting here alone. Master Alan, please have a cup of coffee. Vivi, wearing a maid outfit, walked out of the cabin and handed Alan a cup of coffee with a blushing face. Why didn't you go there? Alan glanced at Vivi with some curiosity. In the past few days, she had been avoiding Alan. She even looked away and immediately moved away. Unexpectedly, she stayed on the sailboat at this time. I noticed that you stayed on this ship and there was no one to serve you, so I stayed. Although some time had passed, Vivi still couldn't help but feel shy when she said such words as Princess Alabasta. He raised his head and looked at the side of the ark. The women there were still chatting to themselves, but they had 2 pairs of small eyes that peeked over here from time to time. Noticing their actions, Alan didn't know that it was Nami or Nokigao's idea to let Vivi stay. Although they don't know what these 2 women want to do, since this is their idea, they just cooperate. Alan calmly took the coffee handed over by Vivi and took a sip. It tasted pretty good. Vivi, if you have any thoughts while on board the ship, can you tell me? Alan's tone didn't change much, but Vivi's body was shaken and she quickly waved her hand. Miss Nami and Miss Nakigao are both easy to get along with, and so is Miss Robin. Although she used to be Crocodile's subordinate in Alabasta, I don't hate her anymore. Vivi said this sincerely. Although she came on the ship as a maid, Nami and Nakigao did not really regard her as a maid, but more like a sister. What about me? Alan looked at Vivi curiously. He seemed to understand the intentions of Nami and Nakigao. You, Master Alan, you are a good person. Seeing Vivi's frightened expression, Alan suddenly laughed. I'm a person who used Alabasta to threaten you onto the ship, and a person who takes away other people's lives at every turn. You actually think I'm a good person? No, that's not the case. Although Vivi's expression was a little panicked, her eyes were very firm. You are not like this. It was Belle who attacked you first in Alabasta, including on the empty island. If they had not taken the initiative to attack Nami, you would not have taken their lives. You are a good person, you are just fighting back. Quote. Alan glanced at Vivi blankly. Could it be that Nakigao used the mind fruit to brainwash Vivi without his knowledge? While speaking, Vivi was also paying attention to Alan's expression. After discovering that the latter was not angry, she breathed a sigh of relief and her eyes became firmer. I noticed your care and tenderness towards Nami and the others, so you must be a good person at heart. Please don't doubt yourself. Alan looked at Vivi, who was bowing at 90 degrees in front of him with some embarrassment. He didn't know what to say for a moment. Could this girl be suffering from Stockholm Syndrome? He was obviously kidnapped. Why are you still saying nice things to him here? This is more or less nonsense. While he was thinking wildly, he suddenly felt a lightness under his feet. The Nami girls who were still on the ark opposite suddenly opened their eyes wide and pointed at the octopus on the sailboat and said something. Suddenly, the entire sailboat fell downwards at an extremely fast speed. Alan and Vivi broke away from the sailboat in an instant and fell downwards, following the hull of the ship in a free-fall state. I forgot about this. Alan cursed secretly. The ship fell, and then he remembered that the Straw Hat Pirates also fell in the original book. But wasn't it because the Straw Hat Pirates had Luffy messing around with the octopus? Before he had time to think so much, a piece of ice appeared out of thin air under Alan's feet. He borrowed some strength from it and came to Vivi's side, reaching out and grabbing her. There was no trace of panic on the latter's face, but he gently hugged Alan's arm. Lord Alan, I knew you would come to save me. Yaosho, this is not why Lousy brought her on board. Alan felt a pair of eyes staring at him for no reason, as if after being stared at by him, he would sleep in a completely dark room just like he faked his death 30 years ago. When the incident became urgent, Alan sent Vivi back to the ark, then jumped down again and chased the sailboat. Even though this ship was the pirate ship that robbed Buggy at that time, according to Alan's plan, they still need this sailboat to sail the first half of the grand route. Appropriate rescue is also necessary. At this time, under the acceleration of gravity, the falling speed of the sailboat had reached a terrifying level. Alan had to borrow several times on the ice that appeared out of thin air before he could catch up. Shuangwa. Ice slide. Standing at the bow of the sailboat, Alan looked at the sea getting closer and closer, and suddenly stretched out a palm, and the Shuangwu fruit ability in his body surged crazily. Just like the Iceman's superpower he had seen in his previous life, an ice slide made of frost that looked like a roller coaster track suddenly appeared right in front of the sailboat. The ice rails on both sides of the slide accurately caught the keel under the sailboat. The entire sailboat rolled up and down the ice slide like a roller coaster, and finally slid down a gentle slope dozens of meters long to the sea. Good guy, it's really exciting. Alan stood on the deck and smiled. Isn't it the next Shanghai? He didn't expect that even if he didn't have an opponent, he could still find some problems for himself. Lord Alan, are you okay? Vivi seemed to let herself go after talking to Alan on the deck of the sailboat. Nami was the first one to rush up to her before the two girls came forward to express concern. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.